Hello, everyone at Let's Eat Grandma. It is No Shave November, so that's why I decided to sport this amazing mustache you see. Anyway, besides the point, I did want to go over some amazing tips I had for building LinkedIn profiles. We're going to make LinkedIn profiles kind of the tip of the month, that kind of the focus actually. So in preparation for the Saturday's meeting, I did want to go over some of the tips I had in building really good LinkedIn profiles. And as always, this is something that all of you guys are very good at doing. I just want to kind of take our current approach, refine it, work on it, and build the best profiles out there on LinkedIn. So without further ado, I have a presentation that I'm going to share with you. Let me just make sure that you can see everything. And it looks like you can. That's good. Okay. So better LinkedIn profiles. I do want to just make a mention that this is designed for people who already have a good understanding of what a LinkedIn profile should be and already a good understanding of what a good resume looks like. So that's why I've designed it for you guys. You already know how to make good-looking accomplishments. You know how to phrase things correctly and in such a way that's impressive to recruiters. But what I really want to do is draw the difference on how a LinkedIn profile should be different than the resume. Most of you guys are working on the client resumes, and then you turn around and work on their LinkedIn profile. So how much of that should be the same and how much of it should be different? And I'm looking to really address that question in this presentation. To really break down, to give the answer just straight up right off the bat, LinkedIn profiles are fuller and more human. They're basically like your resume and it's put on steroids. And I hope I don't offend anyone with that statement. It's just I watched the Netflix documentary, Bigger, Badder, Stronger, and I think it's a good way to put a lot of things. But yes, they're fuller and they're more human. And this is a good way for you guys to remember, just burn this image in your head. It's a more full human and probably on steroids, so you can't forget it. Or it's just a guy who had too many hamburgers and he's full. So a little visual memory aid for you guys, but basically LinkedIn profiles are going to be fuller and more human. And we'll go into what that means in the next few slides. So here are the 5 ways that I've broken down into what makes a really great LinkedIn and how it should be different than a resume. And I also have examples of some really good LinkedIn profiles that I think illustrate these 5 ways. Number 1, the summary. And by now you guys have already been building, great summary of qualifications in the resume. And I do want to compare that to how a summary looks in an actual LinkedIn. The summary in LinkedIn is different because it should take up as much space as possible. So in your resumes, usually you have just a paragraph and maybe a few bullet points underneath that for your summary. LinkedIn is actually a little bit different, and I actually would encourage you to take up as much of that space as possible. I think it gives you something like 2,000 characters. In order to fill that up, use as much as possible. And the reason for that is because that the summary is used for keyword searches. And there's a lot more tolerance to having more information on the summary in your LinkedIn than your summary on a resume. And so considering that keyword searches are very important, you want to make sure you have as much of that information as possible in that summary. The summary is also different in a LinkedIn profile because it can be written and it should be written in the first person. So that's why I say it's a little bit more human. You're kind of writing as if you're connecting to the recruiter on a one-on-one basis. Another tip that I wrote is move the contacting me. So that's basically how they can reach out to you. Move that position, move that portion of your LinkedIn to the summary. And this is a really good tip. And this kind of reasoning behind that is because if your profile is not public, or if this is for, people, scanning through your LinkedIn profiles, maybe they're not logged in, the only real thing that they can see on your LinkedIn profile is your picture, your headline, and the summary. So considering that some people can only just see your summary and they may want to reach out to you based off your beautiful summary, you want to make sure that they have a way of reaching out to you. So I just threw 3 kind of big things at you right now. So what I want to do is pull up an example of a summary that I think does a really good job. Let's see. Okay, this actually was a textbook example. It's referenced in this very book. This is my Bible for resume writing / cover letters. And they actually referred us to this LinkedIn profile. And I think it does a great job with the summary. So you can see here it has the kind of core things that he's involved in here. It's strategy, marketing, branding, forward thinking, straight talk. This is kind of like his slogan, eye-catching thing here. And then it kind of goes into some of his biggest achievements, the things that make him tick, things in a summary. You even have a section down here that says my values include, and then it has his core values. So these are all things that can be included in a resume. And this is something that I think he does incredibly well. And look how long it is. Imagine if you included this in your resume. I don't think any recruiter would have any tolerance for that. But it's different in your LinkedIn profile, which is the main point I'm trying to make here. He writes in first person. He says, I'm passionate about excellence, establishing and exceeding goals and solving problems in a cross-functional team environment. But what gets me excited is blah, 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 blah. And it has a lot more of a personal touch here. Guys, these are the best LinkedIn profiles. It's not just this one. It's this one, who is an actual professional resume writer who's been in the field for 20 years. She talks in first person as well. She even talks about her story. Once again, these are things that you cannot include in a resume, but are totally accepted and encouraged in a LinkedIn. So we're looking at about 4 to 5 paragraphs here, and I say that's pretty standard for some of those top profiles out there. So let's continue. A LinkedIn profile is different because it contains supplemental information, and a lot more supplemental information than a resume. And the reason is that there's a lot more tolerance to extra information on LinkedIn than a resume. If you think about it, with a resume, you want to have it as concise as possible. So you have your summary of qualifications, your job experiences, your education section, maybe your volunteer experience, maybe your skills, but that's about it. You have those core sections, and it tends to be kind of a limitation with a resume that is not there with a LinkedIn. So these are all different types of things that you can actually include in your LinkedIn profile, and I encourage you to include to make your LinkedIn stand out and be more full. So we talk about fuller, more human. These are definitely more things that can make your LinkedIn profile fuller, more human. Certifications, organizations that you're a part of, your volunteer experience. You can even post, you can make little blog posts on LinkedIn, which I highly encourage everyone to do if they have an area of expertise. There's interests you can include. And I'm normally pretty anti people putting interest in their resume. I'm like, why are you putting that you are really into skiing? You're not applying to like a ski instructor position. It's sort of random. But I think there's a lot more tolerance to include something like that in a LinkedIn when you can be a part of a more social environment. So maybe you're part of like a ski club that can lead to jobs and that can lead to connections as well. Your skills and endorsements. And I think this is a great opportunity to not only showcase what you're good at, but you can have other people actually say what you're good at as well. They can endorse you. You can include influencers. You can include your education section, not only your education section, but you can write a little bit more there than you can in a resume. And languages. So these are all things that I would encourage you. And I would say that the best LinkedIn profiles are the ones that include 7 out of 9 of these items. And once again, I'm going to pick one of these profiles. And I think that all of these actually do a really good job in filling up their LinkedIn with this type of information. So back to the professional resume writer. She's actually going to be a speaker at our LEG conference that we're having in January. So she is awesome. So she has publications. These are little posts that she came up with. She doesn't post as often, but these are actual things that have had people lead up to looking at her profile. Of course, her summary. Skills, these are all things that she was endorsed for at some point in time. And I encourage everyone to fill up this entire section. So I think it's about 10. So make sure that your client or whoever actually has these things on their profile. And if they don't have them, ask them what they would like to have as a skill. Education, she has interests. She has organizations that she was a part of. She has languages. She has volunteer experience. She even has a section that says opportunities that she's looking for, causes she cares about. It's not just her, it's every single person with a great LinkedIn profile here. This is the guy from the textbook example that I talked to you about. Skills. This guy is endorsed for a lot of skills, or very endorsed, I should say. Organizations, honors and awards, volunteer experience, groups. So what I really am trying to encourage here is to be involved with as many of these things as possible, to have them on your LinkedIn profile, because they really make a world of a difference. Because, and this answers the question for the slide that I just pulled up, why does having more supplemental information help on LinkedIn? And the answer is because all of LinkedIn is so socially driven. You know, it's constantly posting these things on the newsfeed. All of these things have the opportunity to be keyword driven, to pop up on searches and advanced searches when recruiters are looking for candidates. All of these things have an opportunity for that type of search engine optimization. So, for example, I guess if you're a part of a group that a recruiter is also interested in, then these types of things can make that connection. So, and if you have a little bit less to go off of, if you just have your work experience, for example, then all that a recruiter can have as part of a keyword search would be that work experience. So have as much of these things as possible is one of the biggest things I can say. The next part that makes a LinkedIn profile a little bit more different than a resume is the headline. And you all know what I'm talking about. It's that little blurb that is right next to your picture on LinkedIn. The headline, I would argue, is one of the most important parts of your LinkedIn profile. It's the first thing that people see when they're looking at your profile. It's sometimes the only thing that people see and the only thing that people have to go off of. So when it comes to your headline, these are some things that I have seen in the best headlines on LinkedIn, and I've done plenty of research on great headlines. But each headline should be captivating and demonstrate value. You really want it to grab recruiter attention as much as possible. I don't mean be flashy. I think a lot of people are afraid to be flashy. But once again, if you're trying to capture people's attention in a pool full of thousands of job seekers, It's important that your headline should be captivating and demonstrate value as much as possible. The headline should be keyword driven to the industry that you're a part of. And that's really important because, as I said, headlines are one of the things that people can use in their advanced search. So for recruiters looking up for candidates, the keyword is extremely important when it comes to the headline. It should be forward seeking. And what I mean by forward seeking is don't look back into the industry that you're a part of, look forward. So what industry do you want to be a part of? What type of position are you looking for? If you're looking for a marketing position within tech, then you somehow want to make your headline read as a person who is in marketing in tech. So it's, like I said, very keyword driven. And people are going to be searching based off the headline. And so for what I say as a tip, when coming up with a really good headline is to come up with 3 to 5 of these key phrases that are forward seeking and that are keyword driven, specific towards your industry. And these will set you apart. And of course, I'm not going to move on without giving you examples to go off of, because I think that's the best way to learn. But first, I want to show you an example of what I think every other job seeker has as their headline, and is to be pretty boring. This is actually an example of a great LinkedIn profile, with the exception of his headline. I think his headline is boring and it needs work. And this is what I see as everyone else's headline. It's basically just his position at his company, senior account supervisor at Zocalo, however you say it, group. That's okay. It's what most people have. But if you're looking at the most eye-catching profiles out there, the ones that actually get recruiter attention, you're going to want to have keywords that can actually pull in recruiters. So the next 3 examples I think are great. And these are going to use the 3 to 5 key phrases that I talk about. Back to the speaker at our conference, the career coach. So her tagline is certified career coach. She has a spacer, LinkedIn profile and resume writer, space, Myers-Briggs administrator, space, speaker, insight connector. So these are all things that show her value. These are the professional things that she's a part of, and it shows, exactly what she does. So if I'm a person who's interested in a certified career coach, if I'm a person who's interested in somebody to help revamp my LinkedIn profile, if I'm, somehow engaged in Myers-Briggs, I'm looking for a speaker for my conference, if I'm looking for, an insight connector, my search feed is going to pull her up directly if she's in my network. So I think she does a really great job coming up with a really good headline, and it says exactly what she does, and it shows why I want to work with her. This is somebody whose profile I did, I think, a while ago, but I think it also it shows a really good job of this technique. He was in sales, so his headline, the one that came up for him was top producing sales professional, spacer, once again, account management, spacer, business growth and development. So right off the bat, I know if I'm a recruiter in Chicago in the healthcare industry and I'm looking for somebody in sales, he's going to come up if I'm searching these keywords. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on from this. But once again, if you have any questions on coming up with a great headline, you can always email me, and I'd be more than happy to go over that with you. Okay, part number 4 out of the 5. It's visuals count. And I'm not going to go too much into detail about this because LinkedIn really does a great job already of taking care of the whole visual aspect of LinkedIn. Visuals count. So, pardon me. People use your picture to judge your capability as a job candidate. So I can't stress enough how important it is that you have a good picture So don't put a picture of you and your buddies up um, with a beer, and it's No Shave November, and you guys are just drinking your face off. Oh, no, I'm just trying to come up with examples here. Don't put up a picture of you at your sister's wedding and you are just really sweaty. I don't know. These are actual things I've seen. So before you judge these as terrible examples, the point is you want to make sure it's as professional as possible. You want to make sure you capture a photo in high resolution, and these are going to be the best types of pictures. So what I will say is that's the thing that you have the least amount of control of as a resume writer, as a LinkedIn profile writer. You can't actually go to their house and snap a high resolution picture. That would be crazy. That would be asking a lot of you. But you do have the power to suggest these things. And I really encourage that if you find that your client does not have a very good picture on their LinkedIn, that you encourage them to come up with something maybe a little more high resolution, be specific in your recommendations. But as I said, I'm coming up with examples. So back to the 4 great examples. This man, great picture. It is a plain white background and high resolution. He looks good. This man. This is an example of a non-professional picture. You can tell it was obviously photographed by him or a buddy, but it does a great job. He's dressed well. The background isn't too distracting. And he looks good. Shane Smith. I would say not the best example, and I almost wish that the author of this book made a mention. But what I actually do want to say is this actually, aside from the fact that the resolution is really low, I think it's a good photo. It captures his face. It captures the top half of his body. The background's good. But I would recommend that this person gets a better quality camera. And once again, this is an example of a person who did not get a professional photographer, which I always recommend. But it captures, exactly what you want. It's a happy, smiling face, somebody who comes across as professional. And I guess the point here is that people didn't really have the opportunity back in the day when just you were going off of resumes to judge people based off of appearance. It's a good thing, I think, for a lot of people because, as humans, we have a bias to judge people based off the way they look. It's just part of our human nature. So we really want to consider that almost superficial element in LinkedIn. So I guarantee you the better your picture looks, the more likely a recruiter is going to trust that you are going to be a viable candidate for the position. It's just the way our psychology works. Moving on for pictures. A quick tip, when you're building your clients' profiles, make sure to include the company link or the website if they have it. And it does ask for that when you're coming up with job descriptions. And the reason that is just because it looks good. It makes your profile, I think, look a lot more full. So what does happen when you include the link is you get this little icon right here. Bing, bang, boom. It comes up just next to your job description. It's really simple, but people don't always include it. And I think it's important because it does kind of capture a little bit more interest if you're reading through these experiences. Really simple. Other quick tip, use a cover photo to set you apart. And this is something I think you can only really do with LinkedIn Premium. But actually, I don't know if that's true. I have LinkedIn Premium, so I know I can do it, but I forget if you can use it or not. But if you have the capability, I always encourage to use a cover photo because most people don't have these cover photos. It looks really good. And going back to the example of the client I worked on, this is just a picture of Chicago. I think that's the river, Millennium Mile, whatever you call it, in the background. But for him, Chicago was his home. He loved Chicago. He went door to door, selling things in Chicago. It's very near and dear to him. So for me, I was like, I'm going to include something that he can connect with. that I think looks good. And there are other more plain, this guy does not have one, but there are more plain examples. This is actually another great city photo example. And this is a cover photo of Anne-Marie's company and what she kind of uses. So it looks good. And I would encourage you to use it whenever possible. And moving on. This is the last part. Connections count. And I can't say how important this is, and Sean's going to go into it when we have the presentation this Saturday, but your connections are so important. And these are the things that will lead to jobs just as much as having a good profile. Social proof is real on LinkedIn. If I am a recruiter and I go to your LinkedIn profile and I see you have less than 50 connections, I'm a little bit less likely to trust you than somebody who has 500 plus connections. And really, I'm sure if you actually did the research to see, maybe the correlation between the number of connections you have and how you are as a professional, maybe it won't actually say anything. Maybe it has nothing to do with how good you are. But the truth is, just on a superficial level, at least, if I'm looking at your profile and I see that you don't have that many connections, it's going to say something about you as a candidate, whether it's true or not. It's just, I'm going to read it because I have that human bias. It's social proof. It's just part of our psychology. So when it comes to our clients, it would be asking a lot of you to actually go in and make these connections, to add. Don't do that. Don't worry about that. But you can, in a very friendly way, pressure your client to do this because it's really going to help them in the long run. Encourage them as much as possible to go out there, to network, and to connect with as many people as possible. It's really important, and it's going to make a really big difference in the outcome of their LinkedIn campaign. So add anyone you meet on a professional level is really important. I've been doing it for years. I'm sure have been doing it for years, and it's been very helpful, I'm sure. I'm just really sure. Cool. And the other thing that you can do, and this is really important, is to ask for endorsements. So endorsements are these things. Let's see if I can pull up an example. Or recommendations, as they're called. These are testimonials that people who they've worked with in the past have included. So these are all people that this person is connected with on LinkedIn have said about him. And I was just reading an article actually by somebody she was a top recruiter, and she said that 90% of the people who had applied to a job position had no recommendations like this whatsoever. And the 10% that did have them made such a big difference. And she went on to hire these people just because of the element of social proof. It shows that this person's a good person to work with, and it just looks better. This person you can trust a little bit more. And Marie, the career coach, has some very good recommendations. These are from her past clients, people that she's worked with before. And just talking about how she was a talented career counselor, that this person did a great job with her profile, that she has great oral communication skills, innovative. All these things say a lot, I think, about this candidate than even her saying it herself. So once again, it's not like you are going to go in and ask for recommendations for your client. That would be asking a lot, but you can definitely encourage your client to ask for endorsements, to reach out to connections, to give some of these testimonials. Once again, most people do not have these things in their LinkedIn profile, but these are the things that can really set the plain Jane profile apart from the elite one. So really important. the 5 ways your LinkedIn is different. In summary, there's a fuller, more human summary. There's more supplemental information. The headline is much more important in a LinkedIn profile. Visuals count, connections count. These 5 things, extremely important, and I'm sure at some point I will send out a blurb or just a quick email read through so you can have these things as a reminder. But these are really the ways I see as LinkedIn being much better than a resume, and the things that you really need to have on your LinkedIn profile to set you apart. So that's all I have, and I hope that this didn't bore you at any point. I hope you got a lot of value and stuff that you can maybe even look to your own LinkedIn profile to improve. But really, when it comes down to it, you're going to see a lot more success when you're including these things, when you're constantly looking to improve your LinkedIn in these 5 vital ways. So that's all I have for today. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any point. And yeah, thank you for your hard work.